Amex was a brilliant platform for development in especially commercial awareness. Again, Amazon, similarly to Amex, 5 different company pillars or companies within one. Accountability and ownership is what differentiates kind of an average performer from a top performer. We have to do a lot of discovery, deep discovery, because we actually need to understand our customers, everything from what they do, how they do it, so their processes. With the right inputs, you always get good commercial outputs, but it's all about the inputs and going after new customers who will become the sort of meaningful customers of the future for the company. Most organizations need to run with the historic way of working as well as the new way of working in parallel for at least a period of time. It's going well. Great day. Beautiful. 5 days straight with blue skies.
I know.
Can I get?
What a relief. It's just been such a it's been a last minute turnaround for spring, isn't it?
Beautiful. And it couldn't have been timed better. I turned 40 over the weekend. I had a huge party and everybody who came down was like, wow, is this Southeast England weather? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your 40th birthday. So what did you do? Did you have a big party or how did it go?
I did have an insanely large party, yes.
Right.
Excellent. Not my typical cup of tea, but I did it.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, you deserve it. I was just checking out your I thought I'll doing my research as all good podcast hosts should. And I was just watching this video of your Airbus wing under development, or part of the wing, and your Dreamcatcher generative AI product helping design it. It's just incredible, the technology that you guys are doing. But but look, thanks for joining today. And well, I reached out to you, didn't I? Because we met one another whilst you were working for AWS. And I did observe, actually, when we then spoke again, I said, Ivona, you look different. Somehow, like a weight's been lifted. I'm sure that was nothing to do with moving from your former employer. But no, it was great working with you when you were at AWS, and you built a great team there. And I just had a lot of respect for you. We didn't meet each other that many times, but I had a lot of respect for you and what you did there, and with a wonderful team. But so tell us a little bit about yourself, Ivona, and kind of those moments when you look back at your career, maybe that were defining for good and bad moments, maybe.
It's the bad ones that are as good as the good ones, and maybe even more meaningful and pivotal. So look, I guess the most important are the learnings from each job type or each career stint. And I'd say, if I think back to the early days, I worked for a wonderful, what was then a small medium business, now would be termed a startup, called Finalta, acquired by McKinsey early on, did very well. But what I learned there was accountability, determination, resilience, never giving up, and a huge amount of they enabled any individual contributor on the team to really feel a high level of ownership. And I think that has been instilled in me from early on, and I've just continued with that throughout my career. And there were some major mistakes that I made in that role, customer facing mistakes, which you remember for the rest of your life. But it's brilliant because it really forces you to develop the need to double click on everything and so forth, especially if you're in a customer facing role or a partner facing role. So that was brilliant. That was definitely career defining. But then later on, so I did a variety of different roles at American Express that I joined, and then at AWS, and now at Autodesk, all 3 American companies starting with the letter A, just out of sheer chance.
That is a bit weird.
Out of sheer chance. But what was brilliant at each of those was Amex was a brilliant sort of platform for development in especially commercial awareness. I had 5 different roles at Amex, and they they really invested in developing well-rounded talent, aiming sort of for general manager type roles. But there was a lot of training to ensure that people were well commercially rounded, and that really helped in additional or roles from there on out. But also, what was great was we led with a sort of insights first approach there, and also very much from a, even though we were in payments, it was all about like bringing value to our merchant or customer or partner, and so that trusted value, trusted partner building, trusted relationships where you bring value add from across the ecosystem may not be related to your particular role or your particular job there and then. I really learned that at Amex, and I've used that ever since, and it's been valuable, like really valuable, especially at AWS, which is one, Amazon Web Services is one part of Amazon. Again, Amazon, similarly to Amex, 5 different company pillars or companies within one, where if you can do it right, you can bring value from across the entire corporation to a customer, merchant, partner, which they wouldn't otherwise have got, and therefore you make that relationship so much stickier, so much more meaningful, and then those relationships flourish. With the right inputs, you always get good commercial outputs, but it's all about the inputs, and often the inputs aren't either there or not enough or not the right ones. So that's and I'm bringing all of that together in the team I'm building now. So I've kicked off the building of a new greenfield sales team at Autodesk, which I'm very excited about, going after new customers who will become the sort of meaningful customers of the future for the company.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So you've got on that journey from startup ethos, and what better? I mean, if you're going to get thrown in at the deep end at the early sales stage, early start of a sales career, being chucked into startup land's not a bad way to learn, and learn really, because what you were saying about just building resilience, you're going to fail really, really quickly. Sometimes day in, day out. So and then you moved into that much bigger organization where now there's more training and enablement over at American Express. So very very different, and and AWS, a colossal company. So again, very different. But it sounds like you've always been successful. I mean, they're all tough roles. They're tough gigs, aren't they? If you're not one of the top performers, you don't last out in those roles. But it sounds like you've always been able to make it work, Ivona.
Well, I think it's about being very open and honest about what one brings to the table, and being open to acknowledging that I don't have everything. I don't have all the right skill set, but really knowing which they are that I do have and which I don't have, so that I can complement myself with, individuals around me who do have those. So, and often that leads to, better outcomes than 1 + 1 = 2. It's the 1 + 1 = 3 moment. So complementing, our own skills, and being very honest about what I have and what I don't have.
And you need that learning about oneself, don't you? And working in bigger teams, because you've now said you're now building a new team, a greenfield team. I think you're looking after EMEA for Autodesk. Maybe it's worth I was just taking a look at your customer case studies on the Autodesk website, because I was like, right, let me check this out. I knew the name, but I was like, let me check out what you guys are doing, and it's really impressive what Autodesk does. But maybe give a little bit of a summary of what you're doing, and then we'll move the conversation towards AI, which you're heavily involved in.
Sounds good. So, in a nutshell, Autodesk provides software for any role that is involved in design and make. So that could be from individuals constructing buildings, bridges, railways, to anyone involved in the manufacturing of consumer products. Or so we go all the way from manufacturing, design, architecture, construction, engineering, all the way through to actually media and entertainment, because we also provide software for media and entertainment companies. Those could be studios that actually, like gaming studios, content studios, agencies that produce anything that is basically something you can watch and consume as an audience, as an observer. So it's a broad plethora of industries that it serves with software. But the premise is it's all about design and make, and Autodesk's vision is to enable anyone to design and make. So it's very, very broad, which is brilliant. In terms of how it's quite unique, it helps people make real things. So all of what it's involved in is very relevant to our day-to-day. So if you look around yourself in the room that you're sitting in, chances are, Autodesk software was used to create the mic that you're using to, speak into, or the camera behind you, or the screen behind you, or or paint that was put on the wall. So it's all, or the can that holds the paint that was put on the walls. So it's very involved in stuff that surrounds us, which is brilliant. And that's why when you go through the case studies and the references, it's very relevant to all of our lives, which is why I enjoyed moving towards something that has very tangible impact, versus something that's very often in technology, it's all very intangible. But here it's technology applied to the real world in a very real, everyday, tangible sense.
Yeah, it's absolutely at that core design phase of that creative process, and then how we're going to manufacture this product, and then what was really clear was, and it's obvious actually, was the links then to environmental sustainability, and that plays through the whole of the design process, and then of course into manufacturing and adoption. And so I completely can see that you're not a layer of software somewhere on a server rack helping with some integration challenges. It's front and center as to what the designers are actually using day in, day out, which is really exciting, and presents its own, I guess, get your view on this. You have to be able to almost realize and be able to outline the outcome for a customer in a sales process. Is really important to understand their industry, the outcomes they need to achieve before you even go near the AI piece.
You're spot on. So in fact, we have to do a lot of discovery, deep discovery, because we actually need to understand, customers, everything from what they do, how they do it, so their processes. So we have to go into some level of detail to understand all of that, to actually help inform where can they make improvements, because it may be that they're very advanced, and actually it's honing the process, and it's honing it's removing waste in certain parts of the process, or it's increasing efficiency, or it's driving up productivity. But you really have to understand, and that's why it lends itself so well to even AI and the Gen AI sales pitch, because what Gen AI brings to the table is all about either internally helping a customer or an organization uplift their productivity, reduce inefficiencies, or maximize their profitability by helping them get the right thing to the right customer at the right time, type of thing. But here that's embedded in the sales process, because we have to discover significantly early on to inform where the pain points are, and go very much through a pain point approach. What are the possible solutions to X pain points, and we take it from there. So it's a very value-driven conversation. We have to be able to showcase the benefits and quantify the benefits of any change, because which organization wants to change a laboriously, put together process over 1, 2, 10, 20, 30 years? I mean, often that's where you have absolute inertia and absolute disinterest in wanting to change things that already work.
Yeah, yeah, and that's music to my ears as a sales professional. The term deeper discovery. We have to do deeper discovery. Yeah, there's no way you can just sort of rush into, oh, here's the product, isn't it great? We've just on generation 3.5 of it. No, that's not what your customers want to hear, is it? They want you to arrive understanding their business, and I guess there's going to be a level of co-creation because you're dealing with some really smart people that will know their business better than you.
Yes.
But arriving with an idea about the outcomes and KPIs that are required is key to the sales approach, right?
You're correct, but benefit at Autodesk, but AWS was also going this direction very much, was, hiring industry experts who really speak the customer's language. So Autodesk has done that historically. So for example, there are individuals on the architect, engineering, construction teams who have all been architects before or engineers before, but they've decided to either shift careers or transition from deep expertise to leveraging it to educate others or enable others, or just commercialize their knowledge differently. So there is a lot of deep expertise at Autodesk. So I'm an unusual generalist as opposed to my peers. I'm learning, they're teaching me, but also it becomes complementary in that, in a sales process, you do need people who can ask the right questions, develop quick relationships, earn trust fast, and then you orchestrate the expertise to dig into the pain points and do the deeper discovery.
That's always been my role. I was never doing the deep subject matter expertise. That's for sure. But bringing that team together and then executing in a really tough environment, right? It's complicated.
It's a very competitive environment as well. There's in any anywhere you point within any of those industries, there is expertise across multiple players, not just one player. So it's highly competitive. You think about the cloud, it's similar as well. There isn't just one cloud provider, there are many. So, why would a customer choose one over another? You really have to understand, and it's not about comparing features, it's about comparing the value from the way it's set up, integrated, insights, how you can use it, how does it work with the rest of the environment in the ecosystem that one has. So it's all of those things which are not always easy to articulate, but we have to force ourselves.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Well, let's pivot to AI. Now, Autodesk must be one of those companies that's been using AI for quite some time. In terms of AI's analytical capabilities, obviously, one of your big customers is Airbus. Well, they will have been using AI for a very long time in terms of design and manufacturing. But to that aside, how did you find, as a sales professional, all of a sudden AI is just so big, and now we have to talk AI and suddenly be a mini expert in something where the terminology's alien and what the hell is this thing? What was your experience of sort of making that pivot into AI as a layperson and not a specialist?
Well, I'm not sure I've finished the transition yet, but I mean, I'd say it started 2.5, 3 years ago, right? Or 2.5. And I was, at the time, I was at AWS. And when I think about what was happening at the time, you were either hearing people speak about AI, or you were seeing organizations leveraging AI, and either at an organizational level or in their day-to-day, or you had people around you. So I had competitors speaking to customers about AI, and especially generative AI at the time. And AI has been around, so artificial intelligence has been around for a very long time. It's generative AI that's really put it on the map and surfaced the strength and power of artificial intelligence and its adoption and application more recently, right? And so when I thought about what was happening, it was obvious that like we had to educate ourselves, and we had to start, in order to become champions of the cause, we had to understand it well, we had to use it internally, we had to encourage customers to use it even if they weren't ready. That said, so that was what we were doing early on. You know, a year into that journey, I think we learned that actually we shouldn't have necessarily brought it up as much as we did with customers, because most customers weren't ready to have, you know, a generative AI strategy and adopting, you know, trials and POCs where actually they didn't even have a data strategy. So what we learned after a year of not only understanding it, talking about it, but actually selling it, was that actually we were spending tons of time, resources. These are technical resources, you know, lots of workshops, loads of companies doing POCs to then inform that actually that wasn't generating any revenue, and it wasn't in all cases generating the types of results that the customers were looking for. So the conclusion it drove was actually the most important is that companies have a data strategy in today's world. What does that mean? They know, you know, what data they need and have, where they collect it, how they store it, how it's shared, because what we need in today's world is really, you know, an organizational ability to connect data, people, and processes, and you know, and you have to be able to serve the right data at the right time to the right individual or the right system. And so it was actually that was most important, and developing a roadmap of that data strategy to then inform, okay, when does AI, and specifically generative AI, come into the picture? And you can't do any Gen AI unless you've got a data strategy. So that's been like a 1.5, 2 year learning. And so now I'm much more in on the fad, and I'm much more, for me it's much more about data, and the conversation I'm having is about, you know, what data does a company need, what key performance indicators do they measure, what are they missing, you know, pain points related to any of those, and then we start there. It's beautiful to know what's possible and what, you know, others have done, but everyone's on an evolutionary journey, and as with evolution, it takes time. So.
Yeah, indeed, it does, and that's one of the, as you know, I set up this podcast as part of my learning experience. Was literally research. What do you do when you don't understand something? And the conversations that I've had on this podcast now have just been brilliant, and they've all said the same as you just said, which is go focus on the data. Mm-hmm. Data management, where is it, what is it, getting it all sorted and available to use, and then consider, well, now that we have our data strategy developed and it's robust, what outcomes can we deliver? And it's really interesting because in big companies, but you know, enterprise companies, well, there's going to be many training models being produced, many in parallel, generative, as you say, generative AI projects and pilots, but they all reliant upon those the data being in the right place and the data sets being valid and clean and usable. Mm-hmm. To enable people to move forward. So that's really interesting. If you were if you were going to cite what are some of the barriers? So we got data. Are there
Mhm.
other barriers to your customers going as far or as fast as they would like with the adoption of generative AI? Any other barriers that you're seeing, Ivona?
I mean, yeah, there were numerous over the last 3 years. I'd say the data access, storage, organization, availability, that being the most important. Second being skills. So, it's all well and good if you have the data available and accessible, but what if you don't have anyone who knows how to do anything with it? Either in-house, so often people are involving, organizations are bringing in partners who do know what they're doing, but then how dependent are you on those partners? And does that actually bring a liability into terms of your ability to manage that strategy, and monitor that strategy? So many organizations do a mix of enabling their own teams and bringing in third parties, trusted advisors, and those that do spend time and energy and resources to enable, it takes time. And there's also a cost, because most organizations need to run with the historic way of working as well as the new way of working in parallel for at least a period of time. And some sunset the old way of working, but many choose not to because they can't. They've got commitments to customers or partners, or or they're known for those products or services that run on the historic, and maybe archaic in some cases. And so you've kind of got these two universes running within most organizations, and that's quite costly. It also means that they often have to have parallel technologies, parallel, systems. So we're in this age of transition, I think, and skills are the key to unlocking organizational potential when it comes to data. If there's one thing organizations should invest in, it's skills enablement, skills of the future, being able to use, manage, monitor data, because we're all dependent on individuals who know and can do exactly that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and that's a really good point that I hadn't actually considered. From my outsourcing days, I'd say we've got the as is way that we do things from a technology, process, people, and perspective, and we've now got this vision that we're going to realize, which is what I would term the 2B model, where we're going to go to. But yeah, I hadn't considered that with AI, especially generative AI, especially, you've got to. I think you said you've got to run those two in
Parallel.
parallel, and
Mm,
and you use the term sunset
mm,
the as is model, but at just the right time.
mm.
That's tough. That's a tough decision to make, and that links to your point about skills. And then so never has an enterprise company needed an ecosystem of really good trusted partners more than now, because who has the skills, but those partners need to have that deep understanding of your business. And why are you still running the AS400 mainframe? It's not because you think it's great. There's probably a very good reason why that thing's still there.
There's always a reason, and then there's always, the ways of working, and that brings me on to maybe a third barrier, which is cultural. So we talked about data, we talked about skills, but then what about the culture? And very, hard, non unquantifiable factor to pin down, but there is cultural, sort of reticence, or that can present a barrier to adoption, or sort of scaling, of a new way of working across an organization. So I definitely think about culture when I speak to companies, to understand their openness to change, understand the mandate for change, understand the willingness, capability to change, those types of things.
Yeah, that's that. I always think about that linkage between what the CEO's saying and then kind of how the management team feeling about this, who's kind of putting the air brakes on a little bit to the change program, and some inertia, but also some perhaps very valid arguments as to why we should go a little bit slower. But the parallel running of the new way of working, that's a really interesting concept, especially when you're talking about those mythical productivity gains. Guess what? Great news, everybody. The technology is now going to do the job of, Team X over there, or we don't need that outsourcing contract anymore. Do you? Are you sure? And it just seems like there are some significant risks and some unknowns with moving too quickly into that new world, especially with, say, an Autodesk type of customer who's got safety concerns, environmental concerns, and we need to take care of our customers here, as well as go quickly and be innovative.
Yeah. So you're spot on. It's all about managing risk. And, often that's why, for example, with generative AI, we found most companies, this was at AWS, who deployed Gen AI, they would start with internal POCs on internal workflows and ways of working to see if we could drive increased productivity, improved efficiency, reduction of waste, all of those types of things. But it was internal case studies and internal examples, so that we would test on what was less risky versus customer facing or partner facing. There are obviously cases and workflows that are very well developed, which are entirely customer facing, and that's mainly in the customer servicing, industries. Gen AI has been adopted very well and fast in sort of high velocity, low risk examples like that, like in a call, agent setting. But in others, it's been significantly less quickly adopted because there's a fear of error that's costly and so forth. And also it takes time to integrate, takes time to learn all of these things. So and many organizations, depending upon the organization, there's more or less appetite for any of this. So on that said, though, all of that said, there's also the disruption factor. So if industries are being disrupted and there's a need to drive a certain KPI improvement, then that creates the mandate to drive the change faster or slower.
Yeah, I guess if you're whichever industry sector you're in, you're concerned, right? What's our competitor doing, and are we kind of off here on the risk curve and the way that we're viewing this? And then you mentioned culture holding. Is our culture holding us back? Well, who's ever changed culture quickly? So you've got these colliding, kind of competing things going on here.
Yeah, you mentioned, competitor culture, which is very internal, so that's employee. But then there's obviously in the Amazonian philosophy, there's the empty chair, so the customer, right? And customer expectations have shifted. So I, as a customer of certain companies, experiencing certain companies who adopt Gen AI and AI in their processes, we now have relatively high expectations of what something can be like. It can be seamless, it can be quick, it can be well integrated at the click of one button, etc. But then, we might experience that. We might have a very different experience with another provider. And so customer experience has definitely changed in the last 3 years, and customers do expect more. So that's a third factor to weigh in.
Yeah. That's so. There's lots to consider. So let's move up
Mm.
to the sales team, and I always ask about what advice would you give to sellers maybe who are in earlier career stages as well, or even later career stages, kind of having, because you said the expectation from the customer, and rightly so, has changed. It's, guys, what insights and ideas are you going to bring to us that, but where you've done your research about us? And then I wondered whether, because you also mentioned at the start of our discussion that you're building the team. So I wonder if there's that we can get some insight from you there as to, you're literally looking at bringing new people into the organization perhaps, or people join internally and move from other roles. What's your, if I break that down to two questions, maybe it's, what would be your advice for sellers who are like, what the hell's going on? Because as you mentioned, it's really since 2-3 years, ChatGPT moment happened, and this whole transformation of our industry commenced. And then probably any insights you'd give, kind of hiring and building a team right now, and how maybe what you're looking for as qualities in people.
Yep, really, really good questions. So I'll start with the first one, the second one actually. So what qualities am I looking for? I'm very open actually, as opposed to other colleagues who are very picky on certain things. But what I really look for, because I believe people can learn and evolve, and so I'm not as picky on experience or on specific degrees, or what I do really interview for and look for is, I look for proof of one's ability to learn new concepts and self-learn. So it's really important that individuals I hire are curious by nature, because if they're curious, regardless of where they've come from, what their background is, if they're curious, they will by themselves ask the right questions and dig as you've been digging. and and they'll prepare well, even if we don't always get everything right, and we don't always get it right at the first time. They will self-learn. They will focus on getting better, on researching in advance of meeting a new contact, a new organization, etc. And that's really important to me. I can't spoon feed people. There's one of me, and so it's really important that they have this ability to self-learn and a natural curiosity innately within them. So as we think, for those who are parents, about how to develop children, which I'm thinking about a lot because I've got 3 boys, I'm always thinking, how do I enable them to ask the right questions, and just figure out how to learn, the method of learning, rather than being top of our game on any subject matter expertise. So that's number one. Number two, I really look for resilient individuals. So when faced with obstacles, and that could be anything, it could be internal, external, transactional obstacles, more cultural obstacles, I'm looking for people who are able to take a deep breath, consider their options, work through problems to overcome obstacles and get to the other side. And whether it's within a team, that becomes brilliant, because it really helps the team move forward, improve our own processes. We're setting up literally from scratch. So we're everything from defining the process workflows, figuring out how we're going to do things, what we're going to do. So you need people who are resilient, who aren't just expecting you to tell them what to do and they go and do it. They, as they see issues that come up, you want them to be able to raise their hand to say, hey, there's a problem here. How can we improve it? Here's some suggestions. Let's consider those. So that's 2. And then 3, I really look for accountability and ownership. So you bring me back to one of the things that I learned at the small company that I was at, Finalta. Accountability and ownership is what differentiates kind of an average performer from a top performer. Like that is it. It's those individuals who show that extra ownership to solve a problem, get in front of a customer, deliver the right thing at the right time to the right customer. It's that, and that's just, it's game changing. That's when, and if you have a couple of people like that on a team, that's really what lifts the team into high performance. That can also, and that's something I watch out for, is especially in a sales team where sellers tend to be quite individualistic and quite oriented towards achieving, winning in their own game at their own goals. I really task individuals who join my team and I make it very clear that if someone is not winning on the team and you are, the expectation is that you look to your right and left and that you help the rest of the team, uplift the rest of the team, and that we all win together, which is hard in a sales environment. So yeah, those are the three characteristics I look for. Hopefully
that's really that's really powerful. It's they're foundational, aren't they? That's not, I'm looking for your, what was last year's biggest win. You might get onto that conversation, but not without first getting those really foundational characteristics kind of pinned down in people. And I guess that as you were talking, I was also thinking, and you need to be able to communicate that. So if you're in an interview situation with Ivona, you need to be able to say, here's 3 examples of where I demonstrated resilience, where I went, was able, where I helped others, and where I just used my own initiative. And you got to be able to communicate that stuff, right? And I think that's perhaps where some people fall over in their communication style.
Absolutely. I mean, communication in this world of AI, right, and all the support tools that one has, actually that's what enables us as humans to really rise above the technology. And that's where we really differentiate, understanding the context, being able to communicate what we know, or connecting the dots. So that is really our added value. And so I definitely double click on that. You also asked me about advice for sellers, so I was going to get onto that. So look, I think nowadays it's really important to understand what you're pitching, what you're selling, to have tried it, used it. It sounds obvious, but a lot of today's technologies are hard to grasp. They are really intangible in many ways. So I think really spending a bit of time to understand what it is in the background, and then actually, rather than only focusing, which is what often sellers do, on the good stories, the best practice stories, the case studies, the references, actually understanding where has it gone wrong, where in previous sales cycles have we lost, why have we lost. So actually, one of the first things I did when I kicked off our first cohort of hires last month was organize a panel with previous sellers in other teams to understand what mistakes have they experienced in the last 12 months, like what have they lost in terms of deals, because actually it's getting under the hood of what goes wrong so that we can mitigate, prevent, but also to help us ask the right questions to help uncover, potential obstacles. That's really, really important.
Yeah, and all the loss reviews that I've ever participated in, I think, I don't know about it's 100%, but it's probably 90%. When you review it, you realised that a conversation was missed with the customer. You knew that we all collectively knew there was an issue, but it just did not get raised, and maybe you were never going to win. That was the reason for the loss. So that means you stayed in the sales cycle too long without having that uncomfortable conversation. So yeah, I love that. Love that, Ivona. That's a really good mindset to have, I think. So go research, take a look at your losses as well as your wins, and have those foundational qualities. And if you don't, try and build them, because that's going to take you far. And the other point that I was thinking as you were talking is, this is why I think if you're in complex business to business, say, enterprise type sales, it's going to be very difficult to AI your role out of the equation. If you
Yeah.
really understand that, if you're really focused on the understanding the customer and the nuances of how the customer actually gets change done with their political environment and internal barriers, external change going on, difficult to AI that role out of the equation.
100%. To be honest, as much as the adoption of technology has multiplied over the last 30 to 40 years astronomically, increasingly because of the complexity and because of the need for integration and because of the need for understanding context and contextualization, I think you're spot on. I have no worries whatsoever that we will be AI'd out. Not at all. If anything,
great.
we're needed more than ever before,
More than
especially in
ever.
enterprise sales.
Yeah. Try and help your customers avoid the pitfalls of this thing, not just derive the benefits. Well, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you, Ivona. I'm trying to keep an eye on time because I know all the sales leaders that are joining this podcast, I know they're back to back. I know they've got the next, the 15-minute meeting invite is pinging in. Look, there's been some really, really good advice that you've given for salespeople, and take some notes. What you've heard Ivona say, especially around things like deeper discovery. Please go get focused on your customer and how they're gonna deliver those outcomes. Never been more important than in this new generative AI world. So, Ivona, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been brilliant, and we'll wrap up there. And I hope you've enjoyed the conversation today.
Thank you, Ben. It's been a real delight. Really, really enjoyed chatting with you and sharing my learnings.
Cool. Right, let's do it again soon. And listen, I hope the sun keeps shining for us over in the UK. But you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.